Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever stood in a room and felt like a ghost in someone else's story? Like you were giving all of yourself to someone who only saw a fragment, and then, just like that, they left. No closure, no explanation, just silence. And in that silence, you began to think, maybe I wasn't enough. But what if I told you they didn't walk away because of your lack? They walked away because they couldn't comprehend your depth. This isn't about them. This is about you finally understanding that being left behind wasn't a curse. It was a calling. Because when you build yourself, when you rise from the ashes they left you in, the very people who once underestimated you will sit in quiet regret, wondering how they ever let you go. And that's what this journey is about. Not revenge, not proving them wrong, but becoming so deeply aligned with your own power that their regret becomes background noise in the soundtrack of your evolution. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may not only change how you see your past, but might just change who you become next. When someone leaves you, especially without warning, without a reason or without acknowledgement of all that you gave, it feels personal. It feels like a rejection of everything you are. But what if that pain you feel isn't the end of your story? What if it's the beginning of the most powerful chapter yet? Transformation is the greatest revenge, not because it hurts them, but because it heals you. There's a strange truth we often ignore. People don't always leave because you're lacking something. Sometimes they leave because they're not equipped to handle who you're becoming. And yet, instead of recognizing that, we turn inward and begin to question our own worth. We say, maybe if I was more this, less that, then they would have stayed. But here's the truth. Those who are meant for you will never be intimidated by your growth. They will never ask you to shrink so they can feel tall. And those who do, let them go. That sting you feel after someone walks away, that sharp, hollow ache, isn't just heartbreak. It's the collapse of who you thought you needed to be. And in the wreckage of that collapse, there is something sacred, the invitation to become something more. Because transformation doesn't come when you're comfortable. It doesn't arrive while you're surrounded by applause or validation. It begins in silence, in solitude, in the quiet moments where you're forced to choose between staying broken or building again. And when you choose to build, not in spite of the pain, but through it, something incredible happens. You begin to meet parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed. Strength you thought you lacked. Wisdom born from wounds. Peace that isn't dependent on someone else's presence. That is transformation. That is power. There's a certain dignity in refusing to beg for someone to return. There's quiet strength in not chasing those who walked away. Because when you stop trying to bring them back, you start bringing yourself back. You stop handing out pieces of yourself to people who don't value them, and you begin collecting those pieces one by one and reforging them into something unbreakable. And make no mistake, they'll notice. Not right away, perhaps, not when you're still quiet, still healing, still rising. But one day, when your name crosses their mind in the middle of an ordinary moment, they'll look you up. They'll scroll through your life from afar and realize they're watching someone they once had full access to, someone who gave them heart, time, patience, presence. And they'll realize they let it slip through their fingers. They'll regret it, but their regret isn't the reward. Your transformation is not a weapon. It's a rebirth. You're not building yourself to prove anything to them. You're building yourself to prove to yourself that no one has the final say in your story except you. Why? This journey you're on, it's not about revenge, it's about resurrection. It's about becoming so rooted in your value that no departure, no betrayal, no absence can undo the richness of your presence. Think of it like this. When a seed is buried, it doesn't cry about the darkness. It uses that pressure, that isolation, that depth to rise, quietly, steadily, and eventually unmistakably. So let them go. Let them doubt you. Let them misunderstand your silence. Because when you rise, and you will, your growth will be so evident, so undeniable, that their regret will echo in places you no longer live. And the best part, you won't need to say a single word. You won't need to post, announce, or prove anything. The life you build will speak for itself, loudly, clearly, and in that moment, you will understand transformation is the greatest revenge. Not because it punishes them, but because it sets you free. People often walk away from what they don't understand, not because you're wrong, not because you're too much, but simply because your depth confronts something in them that they're not ready to face. You may carry a kind of energy that unsettles the shallow. You may ask questions that make others uncomfortable. You may live with an intensity that makes people uneasy. Because in a world that thrives on surface-level distractions, someone who operates with soul, purpose, and inner fire becomes a mirror reflecting what others have been avoiding within themselves. And when people see that reflection, they often turn away. They don't know what to do with it. So they walk, not out of malice, but out of misalignment. You must understand this. Your worth is not diminished by their inability to see it. You're not less valuable just because someone failed to recognize your brilliance. Some people will look directly at a diamond and see only a rock. Why? Because their eyes aren't trained to see value. Their soul isn't tuned to recognize real. When someone walks away from you, it can feel like a collapse, like something inside you has been hollowed out. And it's tempting to fill that space with questions. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? But those questions point you in the wrong direction, because the answer often has nothing to do with what you lacked, and everything to do with what they couldn't comprehend. You may have shown them love in a language they weren't ready to speak. You may have shared dreams too big for their vision. You may have walked with a grace, a conviction, a strength that made them feel small. And instead of rising with you, they chose to retreat. They mistook your depth for danger, your silence for distance, your solitude for rejection. But they were wrong. You weren't cold, you were focused. You weren't distant, you were deep. And depth terrifies those who have only ever waded in shallow waters. So when they leave, don't shrink. Don't water yourself down to make others comfortable. Don't apologize for the weight you carry. You are not meant to be digestible to everyone. You are not designed for those who seek convenience over connection, safety over substance. Some people come into your life to witness a glimpse of what's possible, but they are not meant to stay for the whole journey. And that's okay. Not every soul you meet is equipped to walk with you into the depths. Some are only meant to touch the edges of your existence, and even that might overwhelm them. What hurts the most is not the loss itself, but the story we attach to it. We think their leaving means we are unworthy of staying. But what if it means you're simply walking a road too sacred to share with those who haven't learned to honor the journey? You see, being misunderstood is not a curse. It's often a sign that you're living with truth, clarity, and intensity that doesn't fit neatly into the boxes society has drawn. You're not here to be simple. You're not here to be safe. You're here to be. Fully, freely, unapologetically. Let them go. If they walked away because they didn't understand you, let that be the proof of how rare you are. Let that be your liberation. Because now you are free to build a life that reflects your true self, not a watered-down version designed to be tolerated by those afraid of your magnitude. Eventually someone will come who doesn't just see your depth, but dives into it. Someone who doesn't flinch at your fire, but finds warmth in it. Until then, walk forward. Keep evolving, keep unfolding. You are not too much. You are simply more than they were ready for. So the next time someone leaves you in confusion, in silence, in fear, remind yourself, people often walk away from what they do not understand. And being misunderstood is not your weakness, it's your power. Because your truth was never meant to be understood by everyone. It was meant to be lived by you. Self-work is the most underrated form of closure. Not the kind that comes in a conversation, not a message, not an apology, not even an explanation, but the kind of closure that comes quietly in the stillness of your own presence. The kind that isn't delivered by someone else's words, but born from your own decision to move forward, without needing to hear anything else. You see, we're taught to chase answers, to demand explanations from the people who hurt us. We want to know why they left, why they changed, why they broke the promises they once whispered with such conviction. We think that if we just understand why, the pain will ease. We convince ourselves that closure must come from the very hands that created the wound. But more often than not, that moment never comes. Or if it does, it doesn't fix anything. Their words fall short. The apology feels empty. The reasoning doesn't give the peace we thought it would. Because peace was never supposed to come from them. It was always supposed to be created within you. True closure is not external, it's internal. It's the moment you realize that you no longer need their version of the story to continue writing your own. It's the quiet awakening when you understand that healing isn't waiting for someone to say, I'm sorry. It's looking in the mirror and saying, even without that, I will still rise. And that kind of healing doesn't happen overnight. It's not a dramatic, cinematic breakthrough. It's subtle. It's in the way you stop checking your phone for a message. It's in the way you no longer feel the need to relive old memories, looking for signs you missed. It's in the way your soul stops asking why and starts whispering, what's next? You begin to take your power back when you stop outsourcing your peace to the people who disturbed it in the first place. Self-work becomes your sanctuary, not as a way to fix yourself, because you were never broken, but to return to yourself, to reclaim the parts of you that you gave away too freely, the parts you silenced to keep the peace, the parts you overlooked while waiting for someone else to validate your worth. It's in the early mornings when you choose to sit with your feelings instead of running from them. It's in the discipline of choosing habits that nourish you even when motivation is gone. It's in the grace you show yourself when your heart still aches. But you no longer let that pain define your direction. Because the truth is, nobody can give you the kind of healing that you can give yourself. Nobody can sit inside your silence and sort through the pieces of what was and what could have been. Only you can do that. And when you do, when you truly begin to face yourself, listen to yourself, and care for yourself, that's when the shift begins. You stop waiting for the past to give you peace. You stop needing the other person to admit what they did. You stop handing over your emotional freedom like it's a gift that someone else gets to decide you're worthy of. Instead, you give it to yourself. You look at the pain and say, yes, this hurt me, but it will not ruin me. You look at the absence and say, yes, they're gone, but I'm still here. You look at the mirror and say, I choose to move forward, not because they told me I can, but because I know I must. And from that place, everything changes. The closure you thought you needed becomes irrelevant. The questions begin to fade. The grief loses its grip, because now you've done the one thing they never could. You've chosen you fully, completely, without conditions. That's the power of self-work. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It doesn't wait for permission. It simply begins. And in that quiet beginning, you discover a truth so liberating, so profound, that it rewrites your entire understanding of healing. Closure isn't something you're given. It's something you become. Healing in silence is a form of mastery. It's not about pretending you're unaffected or bottling up pain and calling it strength. It's about learning to sit with yourself in the aftermath of loss, betrayal, or abandonment, and choosing not to let that wound speak for you. It's about not broadcasting your suffering to be validated, not explaining your pain to be understood. Because some of the deepest healing happens when there is no audience, no applause, no one watching. Just you and the truth you're learning to hold. When someone walks away from you, the world doesn't stop. Life keeps moving, and so do people. But you left with the quiet, the absence, the space they used to fill. And that silence can feel like a punishment, like the universe has gone mute on your behalf. But if you listen closely, you'll realize that silence is not an enemy. It's an invitation to return to yourself, to rebuild, not for them to see, but for you to become. Because healing in silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're choosing depth over drama, presence over performance. It means you're giving yourself the dignity of growing without needing to prove anything to anyone. It's easy to post your pain, to tell the world what they did to you, to turn every memory into a caption, every heartbreak into a performance. But what if you chose not to? What if you allowed your growth to be sacred? What if your evolution didn't need an audience? There is profound strength in staying quiet while you rise, in not needing to show your glow-up, not rushing to prove you're better off, not forcing others to witness your transformation just to feel seen. Because when you heal in silence, you're not healing for show. You're healing for real. In silence, you get to hear your thoughts clearly. You start to distinguish between what actually happened and the stories you've been telling yourself. You begin to see how much energy you've spent trying to be chosen, trying to be enough, trying to be understood by people who were never meant to carry the weight of your soul. You stop performing and you start processing. You stop reacting and you start reflecting. And that reflection leads to revelation. The kind of insight that doesn't come when you're surrounded by noise, distraction, or the need to explain yourself to those who don't truly care. Some people won't understand your silence. They'll mistake it for weakness or assume it means you've given up. But that's because they can't comprehend what it means to confront yourself fully. They don't know what it takes to face your shadows without deflecting them onto someone else. They've never felt the courage it takes to sit with your sadness and not try to numb it, outrun it, or decorate it for likes. But you'll know. You'll know because every quiet morning you rise with a little more peace. Every night you go to sleep a little less burdened. Every day you walk with a little more clarity. Not because someone fixed you, but because you allowed yourself the space to feel it all and still keep going. This kind of healing is slow, deliberate, and unglamorous, but it lasts, it sticks, it roots itself in you. And one day, without warning, you'll realize you haven't thought about them in days, that the memory doesn't sting the way it used to, that the scar no longer itches to be seen or explained. You'll find yourself smiling, not because you've forgotten the pain, but because you've finally outgrown it, because in your silence, you became your own witness, your own guide, your own healer. And by the time they notice, by the time they wonder how you made it through without breaking, how you're standing taller without their support, it'll be too late. Because you'll no longer be seeking closure, validation, or recognition. You'll be living free, whole, quietly powerful. That's what happens when you heal in silence. You become someone no one saw coming, not even you. Regret has a strange way of echoing in the spaces we once occupied, long after we've gone quiet. Not loud, not dramatic, but in whispers. Sudden memories, chance reminders, the absence of your presence. And when someone watches you rise without them, watches you rebuild what they broke, outgrow what they doubted, and become what they couldn't imagine, you don't need to say a single word. Your transformation speaks louder than their choices ever could. When you begin to build yourself, truly build yourself, not just the external success, but the internal peace, discipline, and clarity, they notice. Maybe not right away, maybe not when you're still aching in silence, but eventually something shifts. Maybe it's a conversation they overhear, a photo they scroll past, a friend mentioning your name with admiration, and suddenly they are reminded of what they once had access to and chose to lose. This is not about revenge. It's not about being better out of spite. It's not about winning, because real growth doesn't seek to prove, it simply becomes. And yet, your evolution becomes undeniable. They start to realize that the version of you they left behind was only a draft, that the things they overlooked, the depth, the loyalty, the softness wrapped in fire, weren't weaknesses, but rare strength. They were too short-sighted to value. There comes a point in your healing journey where you stop hoping they'll regret it and start realizing that they already do, quietly, subtly, but deeply. Because people may pretend to forget you, but they never truly forget the way you made them feel. And when those feelings were genuine, selfless, and powerful, they leave an imprint, a permanent one. You can't erase that. So they remember not just who you were, but who you became after they left. They remember how they made you question yourself, and how now you no longer need their answers. They remember how they pulled away, and how you never chased, but instead turned inward and began to build a life from the ashes they left behind. Regret doesn't always come wrapped in apologies or texts that say, "I miss you." Sometimes it shows up in silence, in hesitation, in the awkward glances they throw your way when they realize you no longer need them. Sometimes it's in their quiet curiosity, still watching you from a distance, no longer sure if they are allowed to reach out. Sometimes it's in the people around them, praising your growth, while they're stuck with the memory of what they let go. And yet, you owe them nothing. Not an explanation, not a response, not proof of how well you're doing. Because the point of growth isn't to be seen by them. It's to finally see yourself. The irony is that the more you focus on your own evolution, the more they feel the loss. The more you detach from the past, the heavier it becomes for them. Why? Because when you stop orbiting around their absence, they're left with the gravity of their own decision. They thought you'd stay stuck in the version of yourself they left, but you didn't. You outgrew it, quietly, powerfully, without needing to be seen. And now you're the lesson. Not the punishment, not the enemy, but the moment they realize what it means to lose someone irreplaceable, not because you tried to teach them, not because you made a scene, but because your existence, your healing, your joy, your calm, now carries a weight they can feel, but can no longer reach. That's the beauty of building yourself. You stop waiting for them to recognize your worth and start living like you've already accepted it. You stop needing closure, validation, or attention. You move from seeking to be understood to simply being whole. And wholeness doesn't beg. It doesn't prove. It doesn't return to places that couldn't hold it. So let them watch. Let your silence echo louder than any confrontation ever could. Let your presence be missed, your absence be felt, and your growth be the answer to every question they never asked. You never needed revenge. You just needed to become. When you detach from needing to be understood, you begin to taste freedom for the very first time. Real, soul-deep freedom. The kind that doesn't rely on someone else's permission, validation, or agreement to feel whole. Because the truth is, not everyone is capable of understanding your journey. Not everyone wants to. And the more you try to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, the more you chip away at your own peace. We grow up believing that if people knew our hearts, if they saw our intentions, our pain, our efforts, they would treat us differently. We think if we explain ourselves enough, they'll finally get it, finally care, finally stay. But more often than not, they won't. Not because your story isn't worthy of being heard, but because some people aren't ready or willing to listen with the depth that your truth requires. There comes a time when you realize that needing to be understood is just another form of attachment. An invisible string tying your worth to someone else's recognition of it. And when they don't understand, when they twist your words, question your heart, or walk away in silence, it leaves you feeling fragmented, like maybe you need to explain better, do better, be better. But you don't. You don't need to set yourself on fire to light the path for someone who refuses to walk with you. You don't need to lower your vibration so someone else can feel more comfortable in your presence. You don't need to shrink your soul to fit someone's shallow version of love. When you begin to detach from the desire to be understood, you step into a different kind of power. You no longer try to convince people of your value. You no longer chase clarity from those who offer only confusion. You no longer twist yourself into 1,000 emotional shapes just to be accepted. Instead, you stand firm in your truth, even if no one claps, even if no one stays. And that's where real self-worth is born, in the quiet decision to walk away from needing approval, in the calm conviction that who you are does not require consensus, in the sacred silence where you say, even if you don't see me, I still see me. This detachment isn't cold. It's not about building walls or living in bitterness. It's not about becoming unfeeling. It's about discernment, about knowing who is capable of holding space for your heart and who only comes close enough to feed their own ego. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Some people are just here to witness a chapter, not read the whole book. And that's okay. You don't need to explain the entire plot to someone who only skimmed a few pages and then judged the ending. You are allowed to be a mystery to those who didn't take the time to truly know you. You are allowed to move on without justifying your healing. You are allowed to become more than what they ever imagined, without circling back to make sure they get it. Because the moment you stop needing to be understood, you start being real, raw, unapologetic, free. You stop editing your emotions for the comfort of others. You stop filtering your thoughts so they fit neatly into someone else's limited frame. You begin to speak truthfully, live openly, and walk away gracefully from anyone who doesn't honor your journey. And in that process, something beautiful happens. You attract people who don't need the entire explanation to stand beside you. People who feel without needing you to translate every feeling. People who recognize your energy, not because you try to convince them, but because it's undeniable. So stop trying to explain your soul to those who haven't even met theirs. Stop breaking yourself down into digestible pieces for people who only ever wanted the parts they could consume. You are not here to be universally understood. You are here to be whole, and wholeness doesn't beg. It doesn't prove. It doesn't explain itself endlessly. It simply is. And that is more than enough. So build. Build when no one is clapping. Build when no one is watching. Build when your hands are tired and your heart is aching. Because each brick of effort becomes a wall of strength. Each quiet morning of discipline becomes a monument to your growth. And one day, without saying a word, life will speak so loudly that the ones who let you go will finally hear what you were trying to show them all along. You were never meant to be understood by small minds. You were meant to become, and in becoming, you show the world that being left behind was the beginning of everything.